All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Friday edition of the Pump Fake. Jarrett Bailey, Todd Haley, joining you as always. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you're watching us live or after the fact. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Todd, how's it going?
Going good, Jarrett. The NFL wheel never stops turning. We got through a Super Bowl. You and I talked about it earlier in the week, but now things are getting pumped up to your favorite time of the year, the combine.
Yeah, I'll be there in what? 10 days? Yeah, I think I leave the 23rd and then I'll be there Monday through Friday morning. So busy week at the combine. It's a fun week though. I enjoy it a lot in terms of, seeing all the people that you only like really see a couple times a year for these trips in media. You get, talk to the coaches, talk to some players. It's a good week. It's a fun week. I don't usually, I said this on the last show. I don't really attend like the drills portion of it too much. I'll sit at the Airbnb and watch it on TV and make some notes. Although there are some fun memories that I have, like sitting at Lucas Oil and just bullshitting with a bunch of colleagues and whatnot, and just having fun doing it. When Riley Moss ran his 40 a couple years ago, and everybody knows Riley Moss is white as paint, and he runs like a 4.340, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And so that was a fun time. So there are some fun moments that you can take when you're in the stadium watching all the drills and whatnot. But looking forward to Combine Week. You've got UFL stuff starting soon. You're heading down there right now in the middle of a trip.
Yeah, heading to Arlington. Everything, all the teams are down there for really the entire season, and then you travel with two teams on the plane that are going to play each other to whether it's home or away, wherever you're going. So I've been through it before, but looking forward to it. Got a good coaching staff. I like our players on paper. We'll have to decipher exactly what they are on the field, but on paper it looks good.
I love it. So today, Todd and I will be kind of forecasting way too far in advance a few teams that could regress in 2026. And then, over the past couple of days, there's been a lot of Steelers melodrama that we'd be remiss if we didn't at least touch on. So we'll talk about all of that as well. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and all of that good stuff. So teams that could regress. There were a couple that jumped to mind right away for different reasons. So I'll start off and I'll say I think the Philadelphia Eagles are a team that I'm circling very hard as like, hey, this is a unit, 11-6 this past season, get to the postseason after winning the Super Bowl in 2024. But over the last like week and a half, 2 weeks or so, there was talks about maybe Vic Fangio retiring. Jeff Stoutland, the longtime offensive line coach, is no longer there. Highly regarded as maybe the best offensive line coach in the NFL. So many guys, Hall of Fame players, all pro players have come through Philadelphia and been molded by Jeff Stoutland. He's not with the organization anymore. Landon Dickerson might retire. Lane Johnson might retire or find a way, if Jeff Stoutland goes somewhere, to go with Jeff Stoutland. So a lot of changes coming to the offensive side of the ball, and not to mention, just this now internal conflict, I guess, with Fangio trying to figure out if he wants to stay or not. Ultimately, he decides to stay, but there was a lot of internal and external noise with the Eagles this season. With AJ Brown probably being traded, what's the offense going to look like? Are they going to be able to get back to what it looked like in 2024? Just so many things going on with Philadelphia where I could certainly see them not just taking like a step back, but I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we're talking about Philadelphia having a new head coach and just a brand new regime after, a 7-10 season.
Yeah, I wouldn't go against listing them as a team that could go backwards. Number one, the bar has been set pretty high. 2 years ago, obviously with the Super Bowl win. Last year, not a bad year by any means, except you were defending Super Bowl champions, and we know there was a lot of, or it felt like there were a lot of underlying things going on within the team. Between Jalen Hurts, between AJ,
Yeah.
Then you'd have Devontae Smith, trying to patch it all back together. You're now moving on to another new offense coordinator. But the Jeff Stoutland thing is huge. I mean, haven't been there, done that. When you have a good one, say in Pittsburgh, when I had Mike Munchak going back to the Jets, and then Kansas City, a guy named Bill Muir, who was one of the best at the time at what he did. He's now retired. Man, it makes life so much easier for an offense when you don't have to worry about that position. I mean, the great ones, they're able to put it all together, regardless of where the guys came from, overcoming injuries, all those things. They just have a special way of making a really difficult job, that you're coaching 5 guys playing at the same time. They make that job simple. And, as a coordinator, you come up with a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of offensive line coaches that bristle and put up the shield and say, no way, can't do that. Where the great ones, a Mike Munchak, a Bill Muir, they say, okay, we'll figure it out. And they come up with a way to get, to bring that idea to life. So that's as big as anything, but they still have a lot of really good players. Vic Fangio, if he's all in, which, I assume, as long as he's been around, if he says he's going to do it again, I assume, he'll have that defense, doing really good things. But to me, it's more just those underlying big picture things, where are the Eagles? So we know they're in a tough division that appears to, it will get tougher again. I would expect the Commanders to bounce back. I would expect the Giants to improve. Dallas, same thing. So, if there's a team you could pick, this is a tough division to be in, and they got some things to figure out.
They do. And, the addition of Sean Mannion as offensive coordinator, a guy who's never called plays before, comes over from Green Bay. And the offense, although, Kevin Patullo's gone, the offense in the second half of the year, I mean, they struggled heavily, where it was pulling teeth to get more than 20 points in some instances. The game against Buffalo, where, they won, Jalen Hurts didn't have a completion in the second half. Like, these are things that shouldn't be happening with the amount of talent that they have offensively. And with Sirianni, it just feels like at any given moment he could pop a gasket and things could go south, just off of his behavior. I would be, and I saw Colin Cowherd make this point, but if the Eagles were to move on from him, I don't think there would be a long line of teams being like, hey, I'll take Nick Sirianni to be my head coach. It's a very weird situation where, yes, he's won a Super Bowl. Yes, he's been to another, but is an elite team with a high quality job, should it become available. If he would have become available in this past head coaching cycle, I don't think he's getting the Baltimore job. I don't think he's getting the Buffalo job. I don't think that he would get another high profile job like this.
Yeah, and perception becomes a really important thing in these type of situations. And, however it happens, I'm not sure. I've seen it many times. I've been involved in it. I know the number one thing, regardless of the hierarchy between GM and head coach, regardless of, sometimes it's both guys answering to the owner, sometimes it's one, and everything has to go through either the head coach or the GM. So the most important thing, though, is, Jarrett, that, everybody in that building, first of all, starting with the players, but the entire building, they have to perceive the head coach as the captain of the ship. It generally does not sustain when that's not the perception, because then that permeates out into the NFL world. And, when you talk about some teams, they only talk about the head coach. When they talk about other teams, they only talk about the general manager. That usually becomes a problem and is hard to sustain. So the Eagles are that group. I mean, when we talk about the Eagles, we're talking half the time about Howie Roseman and the great job he's done. There's other general managers that have done phenomenal jobs, but they stay in the shadows. They stay in the background. They're not down on the sideline, as the game's winding down. They're not getting 27 shots of them in the press box, or the owner's box.
Mhm.
It's just a weird situation. So who is the leader of that team? I think we would all amen pretty quickly that it's Howie Roseman. Is that the best? Even if Howie has all the power, I don't care. But the fact that we're right now, you're saying what you're saying about if Nick had been out on the market this past year, that tells you what perception is, right or wrong. That is the perception. So, that's an issue with the Eagles, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that Jalen Hurts is under a good amount of pressure in 2026 as well, because we've seen the Eagles, Howie Roseman, like if you stop performing, they have no issue getting rid of you. They gave Carson Wentz a massive contract, and within before the second or third year on the deal, he was gone because they drafted Jalen Hurts. Carson Wentz had taken somewhat of a step back, and they dealt him away to Indianapolis, which is why Jalen Hurts became the starter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jalen Hurts, if he does struggle again in 2026, Philadelphia say, all right, well, we've probably squeezed all the juice out of this lemon that we can. Let's, find someone new and start anew again. They've done this before. They won a Super Bowl with Doug Peterson. They won a Super Bowl with Nick Sirianni. If there's any organization who can look at themselves and say, yeah, like we will be fine as long as we, get these hires right, get the right guy in the building, and we believe in ourselves enough to do it because we've done it multiple times. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, a lot of changes, especially at the quarterback position and head coach, if things go completely south. And Jalen Hurts is probably going to be under a pretty big microscope this coming season.
Yeah, I think that'll probably be at the top of Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff's list is, Jalen Hurts, who gets disrespected in my opinion, but you still have to go by what you see. And for whatever reason, whether it was Matt Petula, who's now not there, or discontent within the ranks, who knows? But the guy's done. As has Nick. I mean, his record is. He's up there with some of the greats of all time as far as their first 4 or 5 years in the league. So as a head coach, I don't know what it is, but yeah, Jalen, I would think that's got to be at the top of the list. How do we get him to get back to playing at the level that he was? Because we know in the second half of the season, it wasn't good enough generally.
Yeah. All right. Second team that came to mind, again, for completely different reasons, I put the Bears. You look at their record and how many one-score games they won. Typically, when you're a team that has the dice go your way so many times one year, it tends to go the other way the next year. We saw it this past season with Kansas City. 2024, they won, 11 one-score games, and they were horrible in one-score games this past season. A couple years ago, Minnesota, they won 13 games with Kirk Cousins and won a bunch of close one-score games the following year. Different story. Obviously, Kirk got hurt, but albeit, they took a step back. So Chicago, I think we saw a lot of really good things from Caleb, who proved that when the moments are at their absolute biggest, he will show up with some incredible plays. But if you look at his playoff numbers as a whole throughout this past run, they weren't entirely great. And I think that, a good bit of that got masked by those two incredible throws against Green Bay and Los Angeles. So not to say that I think they're going to tank and be, a 6-win team, but I do think that when we see a team win so many close games, that tends to regress back to the mean in the following season. So Chicago is a team that I would say, all right, let's keep an eye out for them in terms of being a team that takes a little bit of a step back.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Jared. You could throw the Washington Commanders in there, from 2 years ago. A lot of miracle finishes, things like that. Some of the things we saw with the Bears. The biggest problem is expectations early. In a turnover at the head coaching position. Some of the key spots within an organization. When you have all the success so early, like Dan Quinn did in Washington, or even Kevin O'Connell, you mentioned in Minnesota, expectations are a dangerous thing. I get in trouble for my expectations within my household all the time. But no, I mean, when it's different flying under the radar, It makes life a lot easier. Just going about your business and not there. There not being a lot of talk about you, kind of like Seattle did for most of the year. I mean, number one, they're out in the Northwest, but there weren't people talking about the Seahawks until, right as we got towards the end of the season. And then all of a sudden, everybody took note and said, wait a minute, this team is for real. So, when the expectations start out high, I'm sure when they've probably already come out, you probably know it, but the Super Bowl odds and things like that, I'm sure the Bears are somewhere up there. And not that that means anything, but it's expectations with that, which then bleed into your players. And that's the problem, because when players start thinking they're just going to be good because everybody else says they're going to be good, that's a problem. You got to earn it. You got to do the work. You got to assume that you're just starting back from ground zero. Now, what I'll give the Bears is I really like Ben Johnson. As soon as their season ended, what did he do? He came right out and said, "We're starting over." This isn't we're just going to continue on. And that's kind of a Bill Parcells trick. Things that I used, through my years. It's so they have Ben Johnson, who I really believe in. But the task at hand, much like we said with the Eagles, is going to have to have Caleb Williams, continue to grow and get better. And if he does, look out for the Bears. But easier said than done.
Yeah, right now they're 27-1 odds to win the Super Bowl next year. They're sandwiched between the Texans and the Bengals. So kind of like in the middle ground, I would say, in terms of teams and their odds, according to FanDuel, that is. I do think that we got to look at the possibility of them maybe making a big splash. We saw it, was it 2018, where they traded, a king's ransom for Khalil Mack. It just so happens that another Raiders edge rusher who's a superstar is, reportedly on the trade block. If they would go out and repeat history and bring in Max Crosby, I take back everything I said. Because you look at that defense, what it's really lacking is, that top tier edge rusher. Montez Sweat's good, but if you can bring in a Max Crosby to add to a younger defensive line and have him come off the edge, that would certainly, add a superstar capable player on that side of the ball and raise their expectations even more. So if they're able to make a big splash move like that, which, every team in their position is going to be looking to do. All right, we won this amount of games. We got to this point in the playoffs. What can we do to get over the hump? Every team's going to be looking to do that. But if Chicago can pull it off, then that's something that we can look at and say, all right, now the Bears just became one of the more interesting teams in the NFL.
Yeah, Max Crosby is going to be a kind of a linchpin in this whole offseason, I would think. Now, he's saying he wants to stay. I would lean towards believing what he's saying, but there's a lot of smoke out there that he's unhappy, but you never know with the coaching change, Clint Kubiak coming in there, what are those? I'm sure that's probably the first player he talked to when he took the job, because nobody wants to be in the business of letting your best player on the team, Brock Bowers is up there, but I would say without a doubt in my mind, Max Crosby is the best player on that team. You don't want to let those guys go, because the Khalil Mack thing you talked about, when John Gruden ran him out of the Raiders, none of those three picks are on the team anymore. So, if you do go that route, you got to be right on those picks as far as the Raiders go. Otherwise, you're just letting, a great player that gives you a chance and makes your team better. But in fantasy world, if the Bears were able to pull that off, heck yeah. I mean, you got him and Sweat and some of the secondary they have, and they're a defense that had some holes but got better throughout the season. But definitely some things they gotta fix on that side of the football.
All right, let's touch on some league-wide news real quick. The NFL won a grievance over the NFLPA, so now these owner report cards will not be public, which I think is so stupid. Like anything, like I will always be millionaires before billionaires, and anytime the group of billionaires cries about something, it's so irritating and so annoying. But they win a grievance. For those who don't know what that is, every year the NFLPA releases report cards for all 32 teams, and you know this better than others, so I'll let you kind of explain the process there.
Yeah, which I thought was a good thing. Until billionaires start getting embarrassed, then it becomes a problem. But yeah, I mean, best facility, but it's everything. Best taking care of your family, and especially if you have kids, during game days, travel, what type of airplane are you on? What's the food taste like? All, they grade everything. So, this kind of, back in the late 90s when I was coaching, us assistant coaches, first we were trying to form a union. They squashed that very quickly, but then we started sharing salaries, which nobody wants to talk about how much money they're making. But, we were encouraged by the guys that, were kind of leading our group of assistant coaches to share it. It'll pay off. And it did. But they weren't happy with that either, and even head coaches weren't happy with that assistant coaches could go in and actually negotiate at the table. So, it gave a little power, it gave the teams trying to acquire a free agent. That's where it became really big.
Right.
But whether it's public or not, the players are still going to talk. So, if you're thinking about, you're making a choice between going to one team A or team B, you're going to talk to guys that have had some familiarity, and they're going to tell it like it is generally. So, it was fun for us to see it and to kind of critique, some of these different teams. And I coached a lot of different places. I could have my report card right out off of, my experience. So, not a huge deal, but it was fun for us to be able to see it.
I think it's also pretty clear to see which guys, just by looking at the report cards, which owners are more like, yeah, let's stop making this public because I'm tired of this coming out every year. And so it's just another thing for owners where it's just so annoying. Like, if you've got bad facilities, upgrade your facilities. If the guys want better catering, if they want a little bit more, better, what's the word? Accommodations for their families. Like, it cannot be this hard for you to just accommodate them. And just the amount of pushback that they gave this is just laughable. And it's even more laughable that they somehow won it. So, yeah, it's certainly worth talking about just because around this time every year, I think during Combine Week actually is usually when it comes out, these report cards. So I don't know off the top of my head, who the leaders and whatnot were of the past couple of years. But, when you look at teams that are typically bad record-wise, it's, there's usually some sort of correlation between where these report cards come in. So it doesn't surprise me that that they are being taken away in terms of being in a public eye, but that's what it is. All right. So we talked about it at the top of the show. A couple days ago, Joey Porter goes on Cam Hayward's podcast, and what started off as, a conversation really about Mike Tomlin and James Harrison, because James Harrison has really been going at Mike T on his own show. By the way, why do so many former players have podcasts? Can I just say that real quick? I know that that's me talking on a soapbox real quick because of what we're doing right now. But like, how many players? It's worse that current players do it. I think that's horrible. Current players don't need podcasts, but for so many former players with podcasts, it's crazy. But James Harrison kind of been going at Mike Tomlin. Joey Porter was very candid about saying, like, look, Mike Tomlin really helped you earn a living in the NFL, and it's a bit going overboard with the disdain that James Harrison might have for him. And then it turns into Joey Porter more or less calling out Ben Roethlisberger, saying, I can pull up the actual quote here just so I'm not putting words in Joey Porter's mouth, but saying he wasn't the best teammate, wasn't the best person, and that has had many people, within the fan base, within the, former Steeler alumni sharing their own thoughts. So this is the full quote from Joey Porter. The S that 7 did that we don't talk about is crazy. Like, out of anybody that should talk, he should never grab a microphone and really talk Steeler business, because if we're talking Steeler business, his ass is foul of all foul. The S that he did is foul of all foul. He's not a good teammate. I won a Super Bowl with him, but the person, he's just not a good teammate. Like, he knows that. Anybody in the Steeler building knows that, but we protected him because I've only won one Super Bowl, and that was my quarterback. So do I love my quarterback? Yeah. But is he a good person? No. And so from that, we've seen, like, Marquise Pouncey came out and did a thing on Instagram saying it, pretty much just showing vocal support of Ben, which isn't surprising. Those two are pretty tight. Duck Hodges did the same thing. Antonio Brown did the same thing. But we've also seen the other side of it, where on the Instagram comment section of the video, Mason Rudolph was kind of like egging on Joey Porter and agreeing with him. So there's a lot with this. I kind of said my piece on Twitter yesterday, but for anybody that didn't see it, I'm not going to talk on Ben as a person because I don't know Ben as a person. The only way I know Ben is the 18 years he was the quarterback of the Steelers and growing up a Steelers fan and all the joy that he gave me. You were on a coaching staff with Joey Porter. You coached Ben for a number of years. I'll kind of just give you the floor to say whatever it is you want to say on the situation, and we can, just get your thoughts on it.
Well, first off, I agree with you on especially current players having podcasts. It's in no way, shape, or form helps anybody but the player having the podcast. It doesn't help any of his teammates. So we're kind of on that subject. So secondly, having been in that building, and sitting right next to Debo, James Harrison, and seeing that relationship between Mike T and him, I'm shocked to hear some of the things that came out, and I think Joey hit on that. He's like, you got cut, 3 or 4 times with the former regime, and this guy, helped you, have a phenomenal career. So shocked by that a little bit, just because that, blindsided me, and then on the Ben thing, shocked again that negativity towards Coach T would come out, because I know that relationship also. I mean, if there was somebody that had Ben's back, no matter what, it was Coach T. So, and I know Ben backtracked on that a little bit. So, with all that being said, the most interesting thing to me is the podcast that it was on, that Joey went on, and that's Cam Hayward. You put a wall up of Steelers, who's a Steeler through and through. I mean, there'd be Mean Joe Green, there'd be, Lynn Swan. Would Terry Bradshaw be on that? Probably not. Just because we know the discontent he had at times, with Chuck Noll, but Cam Hayward would be on that wall. I mean, he is a Steeler through and through. If he bleeds, it's probably black and gold. I mean, I truly believe that. So the fact that these comments were made on Cam's podcast, if you're not paying attention, you're probably missing something, because you don't, you and I, we talk before every show. We kind of, we know what we're going to talk about. So that was the most interesting thing of the whole thing. And I'm not saying Cam thinks one way or the other or whatever it is, but that was interesting to me. So, but the bottom line is, Jarrett, I mean, none of these players, coaches are running for priesthood. None of us are perfect. We all have our flaws and issues, because we're not trying to be be a perfect person. And we know it's the football world. So nobody has a clean slate, and I think that's what Joey was getting at anyway, was, why air dirty laundry, especially when it comes to the Steelers. This sounds more like something that could have happened on another team, not the Pittsburgh Steelers, just because it is above all any other team, a family. And if you're part of it, it's special. It's a blessing. You are grateful to be any part of it. So, I think that was a trigger for, and you and I, when Mike T stepped down, what did I say? I said a lot of players and people in that building are going to be affected greatly by this, because Mike T had that kind of impact on everybody that he touched or was around. So, to hear it go this way from two prominent Steelers, I think for a guy like Joey that bleeds black and gold, it obviously it pushed a button and one that he couldn't let go. So, and he has that right. I mean, he's earned his way in this league as a true dog. That did he do everything perfect? No, but when it came to the Steelers, he laid it on the line as a player and a coach. So for it pushed the button for him, and he has the right to say whatever he wants. Like I said, the most interesting thing to me was it was on Cam Hayward's podcast.
Yeah, and Joey gave like a specific example on the podcast about like why he said that about Ben. And it was like when he was still a player, and it would have either been an 04 or 05, I would guess. Considering that Joey was not there in 07, because when Mike T took over, he went to Miami. But he gave an example as to why he said that about Ben, and it was that, whenever players had like their families and whatnot in, or, they would just go around and say, hey, this is for my nephew. Could you just sign this real quick? And all the guys never batted an eye about it. They always did it. But he said that when Chris Hoke and Aaron Smith asked Ben to do it, he turned them down, to which he didn't like that. Ben was a very young guy at the time, and he said, all right, you can't do that to the vets. And so that was the example that he gave in terms of him being a bad teammate in his younger days, which, Ben's been pretty candid, I think, about that as well, saying, yeah, when I was young, I did a lot of things wrong in terms of how I handled myself. So yeah, I'll give him credit for that in terms of, being open about his own shortcomings. But yeah, it's just, I said this to you before the show. Just like, man, when you see all this stuff, it's just like you find out Santa Claus isn't real. It's just like, oh man, like you don't like seeing any dirty laundry be aired, much less when, not to date anybody, but like the first game I remember watching, it was 04, the Ben first start at home against Cleveland. I was in kindergarten. He was the quarterback of the team until after I graduated college. Like, this is it when you're a fan like that, yeah, you hate hearing stuff like that. But again, I'm not gonna sit up here and say who's right or wrong. I wasn't there. I don't know. But yeah, anytime you see something like this get aired, it's not good. Not good to see.
Yeah, and it's especially not because a football team, especially an NFL team, is no different than a big family. And there's going to be drama. There's going to be fights between siblings. There's going to be fights between parents. And that's why the best NFL teams, in my opinion, the players kind of police everything within the building, within the locker room, even down to, who's in the hierarchy position to handle the music in the weight room or in the locker room or pregame, who has the ability to walk through the, if guys aren't wired in before a game and they're goofing off, to get after them. So, that's what makes a great team. And, it's just, you are talking about three really prominent Pittsburgh Steelers that, had great careers. So, it's one of those where I hope they work it out, because those relationships are ones that you have for life. When you've put in the blood, sweat, and tears, won championships in their case, so it's, you don't want to see it. But I'm with Joey on the aspect of, I don't want to hear people talking. You heard me come on and defend Mike Tomlin. I mean, he has a special place in my heart. So, I don't want to hear anybody, let alone players that, went to, into battle with him on a weekly basis and yearly basis. It's hard to swallow at times.
The James Harrison one is especially weird, though, because Joey really hit it on the head where he's like, dude, like, Cowher cut you 3 times. He didn't change your life. Like, I think his exact quote was like, you weren't Debo when I played you. You were James Harrison. So, like, I personally don't get whatever personal issues he seems to have with Mike Tomlin, where when Joey left, James Harrison became the guy and became Defensive Player of the Year and went to Pro Bowls and helped win a Super Bowl. Like, again, whatever James Harrison says, that's his business. I just personally don't understand where he's coming from with all of that, and it's very strange, his thought. And on his show, like, you see Joe Hayden try to like talk him down a lot. Where it's like, dude, like, where's this coming from? Because Joe
Hayden came to Pittsburgh because of Mike Tomlin. Right. I saw their relationship when he was in Cleveland. We'd be after a game in the tunnel, and I don't, and the Joey, there's a lot of guys in this league that I've coached or been around or coached with, in Joey's case, but he isn't one of those people that's gonna, make stuff up. Now I'm sure he held back, and as we all could, we could tell a million stories about myself, other people. I mean, they're out there. It's just a matter of keeping it in house. But he is not one to to make anything up, as James Harrison isn't. So it's just one of those off-season dramas, I guess, we got going.
And again, as just a guy who grew up a fan of the team, like I was in like fourth grade when they won their second Super Bowl. Like, this is the people that I, as a kid, sitting cross-legged, watching the TV, looked up to in a lot of ways, and a big reason like why I wanted to do this for a living. So yeah, it's very much a mask being taken off almost, and it's like, oh man, that sucks a little bit.
Yeah, and nothing was too damning that you can have solace in that. I mean, we're not talking about somebody got killed or something like that.
Right.
And I'm with you. When I was growing up and my father was working for the Steelers, I mean, every one of those guys was my idol, and when something bad would happen or something off the field, it was traumatizing for a young guy, that looked up to these guys at such a high level. So, that's also the coaching world. You go to another team, you have a vision of what somebody is, and then all of a sudden you get a harsh dose of reality, and you're like, what? That's not what it looked like from the other point of view. So you never know.
All right. I think that's a good place to put a bow on it. You're heading down to Arlington for the UFL. That'll be, when's the season start for you?
I think we start just past mid-March. We start training camp here next week, so it's going to be interesting. Try to pull this thing together.
There we go. You watching any Olympics?
Oh yeah.
I don't get half of
that's the household fight. Is I love watching curling, and
really,
and my girlfriend, she does not want to watch curling, so it's created some friction.
How do you find out that you're good at all of these sports is my biggest question. Like, luge, how do you find out, all right, I can slide down this hill 80 miles an hour pretty good? I don't.
Well, I think anybody that grows up in a place that gets snow, I mean, you were a sled rider. We used to build tracks when we were young, just pack the snow and then try to pour some water down it. It probably starts as childhood fun things to do. I mean, who wouldn't want to? The double luge is my favorite when they're laying on top.
How do you find out you're good at that?
But we've all been on a sled with another person, guy or girl, and it's just more fun to go down the hill together than it is alone.
I guess so. Yeah, curling's fun. I enjoy that. Obviously, the men's and women's U.S. hockey team, we're going to keep it. They beat the piss out of Canada the other day. So sorry if you're watching this in Canada. But yeah, the U.S. women's hockey team is out of this world right now with the things they're doing.
Yeah, they're fun to watch, and I never would have thought I'd be saying that, but the men's team also, they're loaded. They're kind of the 1980 version of the Russian team back then. So just loaded.
It'll be fun to at least keep an eye out on things that are happening. The speed skating too. That's kind of 30 miles an hour on skates around a track.
Love that. It's got power and art. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I love the Olympics. So it's kind of like when the Olympics end, it's like when the Super Bowl's finished. I go into the little doldrum stage.
Super Bowl's finished. That just means we're 2 weeks away from Daytona. That's all we got to get to. Are you a NASCAR guy? I feel like
no.
Damn.
I've been hearing the ads. I know it's coming. But no.
I used to be a big like when I was a kid, I really enjoyed it. Kind of grew away from it, but over the past like year and a half, like I've been really into Dale Jr.'s podcast. And then like during the summer on a Sunday when there's nothing else on, you're like, all right, yeah, I'll throw this on. Why not? And then with like 10 laps to go, I get super invested. So I think NASCAR is going to become my new like pet project for 2026.
You're out in the infield shotgun in Iron Cities.
I would like to go to one. I think Michigan, the Speedway is about 4 hours from me. Pocono is about 4.5. So we'll see if a trip does come to see a race because I've never been, and I think it'd be kind of fun.
Send me a couple videos.
Okay, will do.
I don't want to be there where tires are flying off cars, hit into the crowd.
Oh, well, I think that's only some Final Destination stuff. I don't think we got to worry too much about that. But appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you're watching, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We surpassed 5,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool considering like a month ago we just got to 3. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, subscribing, whatever you're doing. Be sure to leave a comment, leave a review, and we will be back next week here on the Pump Fake. Take care till then.